This all happened on a cold winter night around the time of Halloween. Me and my friend, who I won't say their name, were going to a haunted house in our area. It was crazy because we never actually went inside of a haunted house, and it was always usually the normal trick or treating, and we were both 11 at the time. So we were walking to the haunted house, and when we had finally arrived, it was creepy as hell. It looked very realistic, and I knew that these people spent a lot of time making it. It was a maze-like haunted house, and you had to find your way out in darkness. When we were inside, my friend decided that she wouldn't go ahead in first and that I would have to lead the way. I felt annoyed, but it was fine. It was very dark and I couldn't see well. A fake Michael Myers looking guy scared the F out of me, and then there was a basement, which I sadly didn't know about as I tumbled down the stairs. They never told you how to get out, so I assumed you'd have to find a door, and my friend saw a door which seemed to be a way out. She opened it and I followed right after her. It wasn't that good of a discovery though, as we saw some dark red in the door which had a light on. We both ran out of there ASAP, and I legit was scared of being in there now. I then saw another guy who said he found the way out, and me and my friend both went out and thanked the guy nicely. We then started walking home, and honestly we were still kind of disturbed, but still somewhat relieved that we got out. We then saw a guy pull up saying he had candy in his car. I was very stupid back then, and I decided to follow while my friend went along too. When we made it to his car, he opened the trunk of it and had a lot of candy in there. I was so happy and wanted as much as possible, and he then said, "I have a lot more at my house, you two want to go?" We were total nincompoops and went around by the side door when my friend spotted about 4 other men inside of the car, some with creepy looking smiles, and they were the creepiest looking guys I ever saw. Yellow teeth, most with balding black or brown hair, a bald guy with a tattoo on his neck, and my friend got scared shitless and ran away. I started following her and the car followed behind us. The car decided to go slowly but make sure it could see us. I assumed not to look suspicious. I then decided to run into the woods to hide because we were in a dead-end street at that point. My friend went to hide behind some bushes, and I came up with an idea, and I'll forever thank the game hide and seek for this. I told my friend to come next to me and I let her down under a bunch of branches. It was different because these branches surrounded the area and they were dipped down from a small hill on a rockyish surface, almost like a small cave. I then grabbed other branches to surround us completely to the point where we would be nearly, if not even impossible to see. We both heard footsteps and held our breath. We then saw feet right next to us but go down the hill. We even heard other footsteps go further and further. When we couldn't hear them anymore, we both removed the branches as quickly as we could and sprinted to my house. We called the police but couldn't do much since we didn't get the license plate, so we kinda just dropped the whole thing and moved on. At one time, I didn't believe ghosts exist, and I used to mock the statement while others embraced it. I don't believe in anything unless my eyes lay on whatever I'm looking at, and at first, if someone told me anything about a ghost, I would probably make fun of them. Anyway, it all started on a cold winter night, and the wind outside was howling, and the trees were scraping against my window with a nasty chalkboard scrape sound. I was inside reading a novel while listening for the doorbell to ring. My friend Quincy was coming over and we were going over to the old mansion up on Devil's Peak. Devil's Peak was supposed to be the scariest and creepiest place anybody could possibly be, or at least that's what I'm told. I was heading to my refrigerator when suddenly a loud crash came from outside. I don't know what it was, but going to the door sent a shiver straight down my spine. I slowly reached for the doorknob when suddenly unbelievable pounding hit the front door and I fell backwards, landing on my back. The door came flying wide open and to my surprise it was Quincy. It seems he tripped and knocked over my plant, causing it to hit the ground and make the crashing sound. Quincy came barging in, telling me on his way here he heard noises coming from the old mansion on Devil's Peak, and before I replied to him, I lifted myself up and took a breather. I told him that's impossible since no one has lived there for years, but he insisted that it was true. At first I thought about it and then replied to him in a clear statement. Let's go take a look at that mansion then. Having to walk up the hill to Devil's Peak took a lot of energy only because the hill was huge and steep. As we got closer to the mansion, I started wondering if Quincy was telling the truth or lying to scare me. Either way, I would get to the bottom of whatever this so-called noise was. We finally reached the top of the hill, and to my surprise, the mansion was bigger than I expected. It was blue with white and had a white double door crafted out of marble and wooded windows perfectly spread a good 5 feet away from each other. The curtains looked as if they were dusted only 5 minutes before we arrived. The house looked as if it had never been touched, and walking up to the front door, I realized Quincy was still at the top of the hill staring at the mansion. I grabbed him and told him there was nothing to be scared of, and soon afterwards we heard some kind of thunder. I'll be honest, we both jumped and screamed, and then out of nowhere we fell on our butts. As we got up and cleaned ourselves off, it started raining, so I advised we go into the mansion until the weather cleared up, and so we did. Walking into the mansion felt comforting and yet disturbing. I noticed there was some polished furniture in what seemed to be the living room. I told Quincy I was going to check it out, and he told me not to wander off because there might be some ghosts. I told him not to worry and that there were no such thing as ghosts, and as soon as I turned around, I smacked my head dead on with a piece of wood hanging from the ceiling. I waited for the pain to go away and then ventured into the living room. When I entered the living room, something didn't feel right. Nor did it feel bad, but something caught my eye before I thought about these feelings. It was a record player, but it didn't have the usual needle you put on the record. Instead, it had a big tuba-looking thing above it. Quincy then came into the room a few minutes later, looking around, and also observed the weird record player. I told him the sound probably came out from the top, and my eyes while scanning the record player caught a circular shape in the distance hanging off the side of the table. I started walking over to it and grabbed it. Picking up the object, I could tell it was a good 50 years old, or even more. Plus, to my surprise, it was a record. The names and songs on the records were scratched and faded, so I couldn't tell what kind of music it was. But as I was dying to try it out, Quincy urged me to put it down because the record was delicate and could break and cut me any time. I told him not to worry as I settled the record on the record player and listened in horror. Quincy and I both gazed at the record player. The record did not play a song, but in its place a recording of someone's dark, deep voice. The voice sounded depressed, and by deepness of the voice it sounded male. Anyway, the voice spoke, and not to itself, but I think us. The voice was telling us that we were now trapped and that the way to get out was to live through the 3 events that happened in the past. Not only see the events, but also feel them. I shut my mouth after the voice stopped talking and thought to myself, I did not just hear a voice from 50 years ago talk to me. While I was troubling with the fact that a voice talked to us, Quincy threw himself at the door, and to our astonishment, it was boarded up. My mouth went wide and I was speechless. We were locked inside by whatever forces kept us here, and then we heard something. I completely lost all thought of anything at the moment, and I'm guessing so did Quincy. What we heard next was phenomenal. It was a lady talking, and then out of nowhere, a loud scream came from all directions and shattered the windows above us by the stairwell. And then I came up with an idea. Whoever is messing with us forgot one important thing: locking the windows, or better yet, making them soundproof. I grabbed Quincy and we started running to the windows. We then jumped out of the window and fell onto the ground. We then started running as fast as we could, not even looking back. Even while running, we heard all kind of noises from the house. Once we got home, we both started locking the doors. Ever since then, I have started believing in the paranormal. And to be quite honest, I still have some restless nights because of it.